Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. This is a shorter weekend episode, just outtakes from my conversation with Adam Gray. We turned on the Zoom and we had a number of comments before we started our Dueling Questions, which will be released later. I'm working on that right now, but this was before and after we started talking. Some of it's philosophical, but there's some sports card insights. We have a shared experience of being passionate collectors, doing some dealing, and then all of a sudden having an idea to do a publication and juggling those hats. So we had a good back and forth. Hope you enjoy it. And this is a rare situation where I'm releasing the outtakes before the actual episode comes out. So I hope you enjoy. Adam, thanks for sharing your story, and see everybody on Monday. I was burning my candle at both ends, doing heavy duty expert witnessing around the country to feed my family. And I didn't take a salary for 2 years. There was no salary to take.
How many people did you have on your team that first 2 years?
3, 4, 5.
That's us right now. We've got 3 people.
One of them was my sister, who is awesome, but she also, not just because she's my sister, she needs a paycheck. So, I paid my sister, I paid the other people. So I was slow to hire, but my sister was really valuable and really sharp and everything. I paid everybody else. There just wasn't any money left over to pay me.
I'm finding it's so much fun and I love doing it so much, but it doesn't pay what my career pays.
It's a side gig. This is the greatest side gig of all time. Some people ruin it by jumping in full time because they do the math wrong. They think if I work twice as hard, I'll make twice as much money. And sometimes you have half as much fun and you don't make twice as much money. What are you going to do? Increase the frequency of your magazine? Come on. It's got to be a lot of work.
It's so much.
Just monthly. And I fully appreciate that. It just was never ending.
Can we move to 4 sports, 4 different magazines?
The most successful digital entrepreneurs are not, if I build it, they will come. It's if they come, I will build it. Basically, if you have people asking you that they want it, they will pay for it. And that includes readers as well as sponsors. In fact, there's a whole field of publishing that's not B2B, but it's sponsored publishing. Nothing's impossible in entrepreneurial for the person who doesn't have to do it. The hard part is doing it. It's not having the idea. And so if you can have the idea and have people coming alongside you that say, I want to help you with that, Adam, I can do this and I don't need a lot of money, but here's how I'd like to be acknowledged. And if you get other people to do some of that, again, it's a side gig. If you're making big bucks, you have to share. If you're not making big bucks, nobody's saying, hey, I want a piece of your pie. Then you're saying, you want a piece of my debts, the money I'm putting in to make this thing go, which is what I did. People weren't saying, hey, I want equity in your company because it was losing money.
Where were your biggest debts? Like, where were you spending money the most?
Myself. The debt, I wasn't paying myself. I wasn't losing money when I was working for free, ridiculous hours.
Did you ever change printers along the way?
All the time. Yeah. No, we were always scoping that out. I did all the typesetting myself. I created an HTML language myself for how you take from the computer to the paginated pages with the arrows and everything. I did the programming, the subscription program, the accounting programming. Okay. Nobody paid me for that because I was the boss.
Yeah,
I couldn't afford to pay somebody. Now, they were rudimentary systems that I later hired people who were way better than me, but I was good enough to be functional.
This is my life right now. I'm the guy who sends out the invoices, creates the invoices, finds the writers, the guy who does the interviews. There's just no end to the number of things that need to be done.
I did that for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and all of a sudden it started taking off, and I pulled back from my expert witnessing and gave a little more sanity into my life. But again, if it doesn't take off, it's not the end of the world. It's just a side gig. And it's a side gig that you may say, if this is a side gig, it needs to be every other month for the good of my family, for the good of my mental health. If this was every other month, Adam, I just want to give you permission. If it's every other month, it'd be outstanding. It doesn't need to be more outstanding, but you chop your workload in half.
Yeah.
Unless you're a perfectionist and you're going to work twice as hard. But if it was every other month, that wouldn't be the end of the world. You have no competition. You're doing something they don't think it's necessary, but when they get it, they think, I'm so glad I got this.
That's right.
But if it's not, there'll be a void. But so just mess with the frequency. Go to every other month. Are they going to complain and say, I want my money back? They're going to say no. They're going to say, keep up the great work. If that's what it takes for you to crank out this great content, yeah.
Your wisdom's appreciated. And I'm not the only person who tells you that, I know, but I really am grateful. Any other thoughts, things that I can do to get it out there? Because what you just said is exactly right. People don't realize that they want it. They don't know that it's needed. And then they get it in front of them and they go, especially the hard copies, they get it in front of them and they go, oh, I really like this. This is great.
Philosophical with you. And that is it, because I think you're doing a lot of things, but it's really hard when you're getting some off the ground, and publishing is a numbers game. There probably are some publications that have a tiny audience that do well, but generally you need this exponential growth, and it may not happen. But okay, what I'm going to say though, because we're not completely on the same page about everything, but about the importance of family, you have no idea the impact that you have on people with the choices you make in the balance of your life and the priorities of your life. And I get that sometimes a little bit too, but the fact that you weren't at the National, no one thinks that you weren't at the National because you don't care. They think you weren't at the National because you care more about your family. That's not to be underestimated. And if somebody's going to gripe about that, so if you were to go to every other month because you took a family vote and it was 5 against 1, do you think I should do every other month or every month? And they say, Dad, you're working really hard. Why don't you go to every other month? And I know it'll be outstanding. And if you said that, if that was the motivation, I'm not making enough money, it's as long as it's going to be a labor of love like this, I want to make sure I love it. And if I decrease the frequency, I'm going to love it even more. And I'm going to be able to be a better dad and husband. Like I said, in the game of life, that's a lot more important than the game of card collecting. And so who knows who it's impacting? But there's some people that are way over the line in their addiction to this hobby. And I don't think I was addicted, but I certainly worked too many hours for too many years. And so anytime somebody in the limelight is making a choice, people notice that. So you're an influencer. So that's my influence in the influence. I'm giving you permission such that I have to give to bring sanity into your life and to bless your family. And one way to bless them is money, but the better way is TIME.
Yeah. I have never even considered moving to every other month.
I had a dinner here with 9 dads and 9 8th grade sons Sunday night. These were budding 8th grade entrepreneurs, and it was a prototype for a program of some guys I know that are very involved in the faith-based entrepreneurship movement. Can this be replicable with 8th graders to be able to think entrepreneurially at an earlier age? I think the answer is yes. So we had a little Q&A. And of course, most of the dads had been collectors. So I had some credibility, but it was a lot of fun because people like creating things, Adam. And you're creating something and people like it.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. You thought about keeping it as a side gig.
Nothing wrong with that.
But at the same time, I've got a great job, a wonderful job. What if I could not do my job and I could make the magazine my job? Now the question is, and you've hinted at this a couple times.
Shooting that down, like I said, it becomes not a hobby anymore. It becomes a job and a business. And for me, it didn't ruin it for me, partly because I had such outstanding teammates. And I love sports and everything. And we had this variety. But I had a heart attack too. I was over the line. So
how old were you when you had your heart attack?
47.
Okay. So I've got 9 years is what you're saying.
Yeah, don't do as I did.
What's your goal for the content creator meetings?
I've sharpened my goal for my podcast and for my involvement in the hobby. It used to be to have maximum circulation when I was doing the magazines, but I just wanted to do a really good job. And I thought people would accept it. A price guide was really needed. The fact that it was very well accepted, it had a dominant market share, that was all great. But whether it had been big or small, I still would have been trying to be as accurate as I could. So now I'm not trying to have the biggest and the best, but I do think I can influence the influencers. And you would be absolutely one of those. So I want to make myself available and provide content and opportunities to be involved in influencing the influencers. So this hobby content creator dinner is a bullseye. And so many of the pictures from the National were with other content creators. Although a lot of the success of Beckett Publications was in the B2B arena, that we had dealers that knew we had their back, that we weren't going to undercut them. And I think your digital publishing is excellent, but I don't think it'll ever be delivering 50 copies to the card shop and see how many get sold and have them send you back the others. But you're doing great work. I just really enjoy getting that.
The content you're creating is helping people like me who want to have more of our career within the world of sports cards as it pertains to the magazine. And I'm thrilled with the success, but we'll never have the circulation. We know that. People needed a price guide. In my opinion, the thing that I loved most about it was the things next to the price guide, the stories and the information and the knowledge and all of that stuff. You talked to me about it before, this balance between the qualitative and the quantitative. I think you're exactly right about that. But I think the price guide is why the shops needed 20 copies. But the hard copies have definitely been a game changer for us, but we're never going to be selling 1 million magazines a month.
I'm not doing 1 million podcast listeners a month either. So, just it's different day and time, but you have a nice blend, as we tried to have, a price guide wrapped around some pleasing aesthetics and some other content that's helpful. Your indexes, you're liable to get quoted and picked up on national media to grab your comparison to the S&P, and then somebody's going to dig in and read the whole thing. Then they're hooked because it's a pleasant, informative, entertaining read.